Hi, Assalamualaikum. So we are in the part 3 in which we want to look at the industrial application of boiler system. Okay, so in the previous video, we have already covered the domestic use. Okay, we have 3 types of boiler in which we have system, we have combi, and we have the regular or the conventional boiler. And also we have the old school type, the bag boiler system. Okay, in the industrial application, it used widely, okay, in the power generation or in the industrial application, for example, sterilizing, bleaching, and so on, okay. So these are 2 types that you need to know for power generation, also for industrial purpose. The first one is the fire tube boiler, and the second one is the water tube boiler. Okay, you will differentiate these two, okay. You look at the diagram. Okay, where is the water and where is the heat or the fire? Okay, let's look into the fire tube boiler. Okay, so the main idea for fire tube boiler, they have water, lots of water involved. Okay, so in this picture, the diagram, the water is surrounded. Okay, so fill up a boiler barrel or drum, okay, and it used for the steam locomotive, and the water will be heat up, okay, using this heat exchanger, and usually it's produce a low rate of steam, so the steam is not really superheated, okay, but it can store the high steam. They have a good storage, but they cannot provide the high pressure or the high flow of steam produced. Okay, so what are the difference between the fire and the water just now? Okay, let's look at this diagram. Okay, this is more detailed. Okay, the water is in the barrel or in the drum. Okay, this fill up with the water, and the heat is inside this tube. Yeah, the heat is inside the tube. So these are the furnace. Okay, the furnace will heat up and the heat will go into this tube. Okay, and it will release the hot gases out. So the water from here will be heat up and produce the steam. Okay. So fire tube boiler feed hot gases from the heat source from the furnace, and they go into the tube and heat up the water surrounded, and then the heat will produce and go out through this side. This is a very easy and clear diagram to draw when you are required to explain the working principle of the fire tube boiler. So the tube have the heat inside. Okay, we will compare with the water tube boiler, and so it can store the steam inside the drum or the barrel here. Okay, let's look the video on the working principle.
Firstly, fire tube boilers. The typical makeup of this type of boiler is a furnace, a water tank acting as a boiler, and a smokestack. There are tubes running through the water tank carrying the heat from the furnace, and the smokestack vents the heat and gases caused by the heating effect so that the pressure does not continue to rise above the intended level. So, the fuel is burned inside the furnace. The tubes transfer the heat of the furnace through the water in the tank. Once it is heated, the steam generated is moved along downstream. Fire tube boilers tend to be the cheapest type of boiler to produce, as they have a fairly simple construction, but are typically limited for low to medium pressure applications due to the thickness of the outer shell containing the water.
Okay, so it's economical, all right, and more easy to install. So disadvantage are more fuel efficient, okay, easy to operate, and simple construction compared to the water tube, and cheapest. That's the keyword, cheapest, okay, compared to the water tube. And this disadvantage, they have the thickness because they have to store the water, lots of water, and also the steam produced, okay, and limited to low pressure. So it cannot generate power for the steam turbine. So for the fire tube, is more on the industry application. Okay, let's look at this question that related to the fire tube, and we will discuss it in the live session. And now look at the water tube boiler. Okay, let's look at this picture here. Okay, this picture here. And the water is inside the tube. Yes, that's the difference between the fire tube just now. The water is inside the tube and surrounded by the heat from the furnace. Okay, so these are very clear diagrams. So the water get into this tube, okay, up into the vessel that contain the heat, and then the steam will come out, okay, from the tube. The feed water runs through the tubes compared to the fire tube boiler. And steam demand and steam pressure required high, so they can produce a very high pressure steam compared to the fire tube. Okay, this is suitable for the power generation. We're using the steam turbine to generate power, to generate electricity. So it is very useful. Okay, and they have a mono tube boiler. Okay, it means that they have a single tube going into the boiler. Okay, sometimes they have more than one tube, the water tube inside the boiler. Okay, the best thing is they can produce the high pressure application that needed in the power generation. Okay, let's look into this video on the water tube boiler.
The design is fairly similar to a fire tube boiler, but instead of the furnace heating fire tubes to heat water in a tank, the furnace heats water tubes inside the furnace. In the same way, a fuel source is burned in the furnace, causing the water tubes inside to heat up. Once again, when the water is boiled, steam is generated and moved downstream. A water tube boiler is more thermally efficient than a fire tube boiler, but they are more complex to construct, and the quality of the water can be a limiting factor. The water may need filtering to operate most effectively.
Okay, now let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of the water tube boiler. Okay, the heat is transferred in the more thermally efficient for the water tube boiler. Okay, because it can produce high steam. Okay, high pressure steam. So that's the advantage of the water tube that used widely in the power generation. And disadvantage, it's more complex to construct compared to the fire tube, and it's cannot deal with the poor water quality because they need to produce high steam, so the water need to be filtered, water need to be treated so that it will operate effectively. Okay, so there's lots of maintenance need to be done for the water treatment, and less storage capacity compared to the fire boiler system. Okay, so that's the advantage and disadvantage, and these are some of the questions that related for the water tube and also the fire tube. From this question, they ask on the differentiate using a diagram, so you need to draw the fire tube and the water tube, and also advantage and disadvantage. So we will discuss this in the live session. So I see you in the live session. Okay, so take care, bye.